Hi, I'm Bill Putnam, CEO of Universal Audio. Today we're going to talk about some of the history of Universal Audio through the lens of the 1176 limiter, which was designed by my father, and something he was very proud of. When we were restarting Universal Audio, I came across a bunch of my dad's design notebooks. So I actually kind of got to get in his head as he was designing the 1176 and retrace some of his steps. I wish I had found the design notebooks a little bit earlier in our process so I wouldn't have made so many mistakes when we were working through that design. But he was very motivated by the world of solid states. Of course, he grew up in tubes. That's what he learned in school. He had all the great old books from RCA on tube design, and that's where he was steeped. And he was trying to get a hold and get a grasp of solid state, and heard about FETs and realized that you could use a FET as a voltage variable resistor. And in fact, his first motivation, he had developed variable mu-style compressors, the 176, 175, but he wanted to move into the world of solid state. And initially, actually, he basically, and I didn't realize this had been done, but he just wanted to have a control surface at the mixing station and have all the preamps racked up. I'm guessing that he wanted the preamps out in the studio so you didn't have to have as long of a run to the preamps, so you could have a higher level balanced signal coming back and reduce noise. So he was looking at all sorts of schemes to remote control gain. And then he realized he had these schemes that were very fast. And in fact, the thing that really challenged all dynamic range manipulation, all compressors, all limiters, was the speed of the attack. And this was super important because their initial motivation was broadcast, and if an audio transient came in too loud, too hot, it would distort the output and it would splatter, and it would AM radio station would splatter over the band and they'd get fines from the FCC. So the real key was to make things fast. And he found out that the voltage variable behavior of the FET was extremely fast, and he made a very fast, like 20 microsecond attack compressor. So one of the key aspects of the 1176 that he was proud of was its extremely fast attack. Before that, it was a lot of opto compressors, and there just the ballistics of turning on an optical element slowed down things like attack. So the 1176 was motivated by to get fast attack, and for him, it was his first foray into solid state design. I think the uses of compressors as, really driving them, getting really a lot of crunch, hearing that release and so on, kind of came later. And so a lot of what he did was really driven by the practicalities of the studio. There are a lot of different versions of the 1176. And I think that's another thing I saw from my dad, is he never was just complacent in anything. He would always go back in, or there was something he didn't quite like. So the first few versions of the 1176, well, first of all, they're noisy. There's an LN mod which came later, which is what the modern 1176 that Universal Audio makes is modeled after. But the first ones were extremely noisy. So the first few revisions were mainly to try to deal with that. And the LN mod was actually not done by my dad. It was done by a fellow named Brad Plunkett, who worked at UREI and was later the director of engineering at UREI. And Brad Plunkett, by the way, is the father of the wah pedal. So Brad did the LN mod, and that was just a way of biasing the FET so it decreased distortion. My dad actually reused a lot of modules, actually kind of similar to what the modern Universal Audio does. He had a preamp module called the 1108, which he used as the output stage in the 1176. That was supplanted later by the 1109, which then became the later version's output stage in the 1176, which some people say didn't quite sound as good. So I get asked quite a bit about, what are some of the defining moments in the sound, and I don't really know exactly. I just know it happened. But the drums on my Sharona is 1176 and maybe 1176 and maybe more 1176. So really kind of an overuse in that. There are all sorts of strange ways to use it, where the so-called all button mode, which in fact, when we were modeling this, we knew we had it right when you do all button mode, it puts it in this strange state that we've argued about what's actually happening there. But the meter is all whacked out, as people who've done this know. But what's cool is when you do a real physical model of a piece of equipment, rather than just try to approximate what it sounds like by manipulating filters or whatever, when you really do a physical model, it should just do exactly what the original does. And sure enough, the meter did exactly what the real version does. We learned so much by doing the analog products. And in fact, the transformer design, it's pretty crazy. And my dad designed the transformer. And I don't know that it's even a good design, because it was hard to manufacture and it was really tricky. It was one of these things where we'd find things that weren't documented, like, oh, this is really a problem. But if I was gonna try to mellow out or stabilize the output stage, I would put a resistor right here. Oh, there's a pad for a resistor on the circuit board that isn't on the schematic. So we'd find things like that were just, accidents. And sure enough, a lot of times when we're modeling things, we'll find stuff that was just something added during production that wasn't documented. I thought this was all going to be easy, and it turned out none of this was easy. And frankly, if it was easy, I don't think it would have been interesting. So this has been way more interesting. Maybe it could be interpreted as way more of a pain in the ass than I ever would have expected. There's no right answer for what sounds best. I actually get that asked to me at trade shows all the time. Hey, what's the best thing to use? And it really is what suits your creative goal.